Hi there. Today I have Dr. Irene Fan, one of our recent doctoral graduates, coming in to tell us more about her research. Well, Dr. Fan, thanks for coming in.
Thank you,
How
Professor
are you?
Choi. Good, thank you.
Right. Well, I understand that, Dr. Fan, your research was on relating intellectual capital to organizational performance. Wow, that's fascinating. Can you tell us more about, this idea of your research and so forth?
Certainly. Thank you. We all know that innovation is key and important to any organization. And innovation performance does not only measure the past achievements, but also forward looking an organization's sustainability and compatibility. Therefore, many research has already been done in this area to understand different factors from micro to macro level, how to enhance innovation performance. Now, in my study, I use intellectual capital as a framework. Now, what is intellectual capital? It is, in essence, all the intangible assets within an organization that can create future values for the organization. Normally, it's broken down into three areas: the human capital, structural capital, and relational capital. So, in the using intellectual capital to study innovation performance has been done by many researchers. Now, the researchers will use different factors from micro level to macro level in order to study the impact individually onto innovation performance. However, this type of study usually are done in a causal relationship, meaning that the impacts are linear. The output are proportional to the input.
Well, obviously, your research have overcome some of those limitations. So, tell us more about what's new in your approach.
That's correct. In my approach, I see organization as a complex system. Therefore, there are certain characteristics of the complex system that we have to make note of. First of all, it is nonlinear, meaning that what we usually say 1 plus 1 is more than 2, the output is not necessary to the input proportionally. And secondly, is all the elements within the complex system, they are independent. And thirdly, is important for the initial condition of a complex system. Now, using that, I actually deployed something called NK model. And NK model is a very simple model, and it used two parameters, N and K. N being the number of elements in a system, and K is measure the complexity or the interrelationship among the elements. And it was originally used for evolutionary biology study. In order to use that into organizational study and intellectual capital study, we have to extend the original model, which I call it a weighted and informed NK model, WINK.
Right. So obviously you have tried this out and validated in some cases. Well, I'm interested to know about those cases and particularly the findings.
Sure. Using this NK model, there are two parts to it. As I said, there are initial conditions is important. So knowing the current status of an organization's strength of IC is number one. So I use different surveys and statistical analysis to understand the relationship and the contribution of different IC elements on the innovation. And then the second part is what I call a prescriptive part. Using a agent-based simulation model, a 3D map was generated, and we call it a fitted landscape. This map is a topology with hills and valleys. Each point on a map represents a combination of different IC elements with various strength, and that will contribute different height, measuring the performance output. Now, with the input of the initial state that we know the organization is currently at, and the ultimate result that we want to achieve in a certain point of the topology, there is a path search exercise that you can find the ways to achieve the ultimate goal by identifying the steps you can take to change your IC combination. So basically, this is the idea of the model. Now, I have applied it into three different cases: one Canadian company, two Hong Kong company, all are within the ICT industry. The interest of the finding is ultimately every single company has its own IC characteristic. Even with the two Hong Kong companies within the same umbrella, similar external factors, they also exhibit different character. Therefore, you can design a different strategy in order to enhance their innovation output. And the second thing we identify and find interesting is companies usually think that they are doing well in certain areas, but what they do not know is those strengths in certain IC areas cannot contribute greatly in their output. Rather, there are some other factors they do not consider carefully might bring a higher impact. Let me give an example. A lot of organizations think that knowledge workers are important. So acquiring more knowledge worker is a normal way of organization think they can improve their innovation performance. However, without proper organizational culture or innovation processes in place, those things cannot be done well. Now, thirdly, I extend it a little bit further. The interesting part is the agents we put into the simulation model allow them to communicate with each other. And what we find is the outputs, results of communication, causing each individual finding the maximum innovation performance faster and higher than they walk on their own. So this probably will indicate that knowledge sharing is beneficial to innovation performance.
Because that collaborative effect further enhances the speed.
That's correct.
Well, that's wonderful, and it's an important revelation for organizations who are aiming to enhance their organizational performance. So, I suppose, obviously, as a researcher, you're continuing to track the development of the field. So, what's your assessment about the current growth and direction of this research?
Certainly, there are two areas I really think that the future research can go forth. The first part, I can see the R&D can move on is about the SME. The SME will not have sufficient data quantitatively to measure the IC characteristic. However, using storytelling or sense making, it will be able to allow them to identify their IC characters, and which I have already seen some overseas researchers are doing some work in this area. And secondly, I will see that applying this model to other industry sectors or to the city level, it will be interesting to see the comparison among different industry sectors or the cities.
Wonderful. Well, for those of you who are looking at picking a research topic to go further into this area, I think there's certainly food for thought. At this point in time, I'd like to conclude this interview and like to thank Dr. Fan for sharing with us this wonderful piece of experience.
Thank you.